Oh, when you magnetize his light, how marvelous will be the results! For forthcoming from the domain of the heart, the shafts of light will encircle both head and heart, revealing at last the bedrock of consciousness that rises into those points of light that in the air are the encircling domain of the angelic hosts. O mankind, how long will you disregard the strands of reality that bring to the soul the fashion of those divine times that were of old, when the sacred and wonderful manifestation of divine truth revealed the mission of each life? Have you thought, beloved mankind, of the power of that mission and of how that mission can be restored to you, until at last you will understand why, when in past times you have often not understood? Darkness must be overcome by light, and the burning of darkness will reveal at last the wonders of his love. His love is a love of divine grace, a love of understanding the family of God upon this earth and in heaven. How frequently mankind through the years and centuries have builded walls of rock, stony walls, around their hearts' chalices, until no more were they able to support that magnificent and holy release of the ladder of light into their consciousness. When the ladder of light is revealed, when mankind come to understand its meaning, they perceive in themselves the way. Jesus said long ago, I am the way, the truth, and the life. How few have understood this. How few have understood themselves as the way. For they have been so busy involving themselves in those skeins of the spider's web that trap them in that worldly design that refuses to let them go. And thus darkness appears to cover the earth, whereas light from within breaks forth as a lantern in the air. And when the lantern of reality is perceived, man sees God everywhere. Behold, the burning and the smoking lamp which appeared to Abram of old. Behold, the burning and smoking lamp which passed before his gaze. Obscurity appeared, and the flame. Out of the flame appeared the scenes of divine intervention, of divine intention, of the universal perfection of God. Things that had never been imagined by mankind. Gifts and graces complete in their own right stood forth upon the screen of the mind, and mankind began at last to understand that he was called beloved. Human beings did not understand when they were called to task why it was so, and the necessity of the moment. Darkness seemed to cloud the mind with ease, and the virtue of a reasonable intelligence to fly the coop. How vain mankind are! Proud as peacocks, they strut and besmirch the world with the tracks of darkness as turkey tracks or chicken tracks upon the snow. The purity of God is not seen, and instead the manifestations are without meaning, the scratchings of infidels, and those who have cultivated darkness as though darkness could live. We have said darkness cannot live, for darkness is not of God. God is light, and the light from the heavenly lanterns fills the air with a filmy blue vapor of the will of God. Men inhaling this vapor create those distillations of consciousness by which universal effort is procured. Once it is procured and released, individuals find then that their momentums of darkness and vanity cease, and instead of vanity manifesting in the world, grace appears. It is like a holy golden lyre. This beautiful musical instrument, which is used to attune the soul to those musical tones and sweet fragrances of the flowers of God, by the hand of angelic faces reveals at last the splendor of the way man should go. For he is intended to be a chalice of receptivity, one who is able to perceive in himself those virtuous strands of holy reality that have not been besmirched by darkness. For then the sullying of mankind of the holy wings of the pure white dove are no more, and men perceive at last that their confidences have not been betrayed by God, nor have they been cast aside without the succor of an ark of God. They then have been blessed beyond the recognition of their own soul's knowing. They have been blessed beyond their comprehensions. They have began to externalize in the world of form those holy radiances that will adorn the sweetness of a cosmic morn. For now, when Gabriel blows his horn, the men of earth arise to see the damsel of God purity, arrayed in white and shining then. She sheds her light upon all men, the lantern of the Holy One, the spirit of the central sun, reveals itself as fragrance bold. 'Twill bring to earth the holy gold of heaven's own beloved stronghold, to reveal the passions of the free, the kindling of eternity within mankind's unfortunate and native darkness, which he knew not at all in former times, but sought the light as though it were that precious touch of Savior's hand to heal the blindness and demand of worldly sensation, the welter of mankind's feelings and their failures are now diminished by the light of those magnificent holy trailings of cosmic radiance. All frailings are released into the light of strength, for God will not cease when there is hope to extend, to evoke the passions and the light of 10,000 suns descending, conflagration of his might, ne'er ending, but forever revealing sunderings of cosmic thunders, revealing darkness, erasing blunders, purifying and revealing wholeness made complete in garments white, and so sweet to fill the soul with all God's love, the freedom from above. What is this freedom of which I speak? Is it a ceasing of mankind's heart's direction, or is it the caress of infinity upon the cheek of time? Awareness and reality deserve the attention of all, and when we call, it is not to evoke blindness, but love. And when the passions of God's love reveal that beauteous lantern in the air, 'twill call all men from worldly care unto the crossing of the bar of destiny fair. O God, reveal thyself, and seal thy children holy in the wholeness of thy name, that they may no longer stoop to human blame and all that is the sundering of reality's tie to God's pleasure. O holy will, how beauteous are thy never-ceasing passions of caress upon the soul. O winged hope that reveals the goal no more to drop unto the earth as faithless energy or curse, mankind at last saying unto his God, I hear thee, I hear thy love, I am thy love, I am thy reality, I feel thy caress, thy gentleness, thy sweetness, thy ever-pressing nearness, and I say, oh, repudiate, repudiate, repudiate those former times when men have lived in and cursed the darkness by their weariness in well-doing. O beautiful light, shewing forth that pencil beam of divine radiance through the night of man's failure dream, revealing then a pathway to the stars beyond, and all the compassion of that bond of freedom. Now I know, each soul may say, and see the glow that points the way to everyone who will understand that he is that way, revealing God's command and power to take dominion o'er the earth, erase the curse, heal the blind, kindle the flame within the mind. Oh, beauteous fire, expanding world, creating greater God desire, unfurling banners of hope over the heart of the world, and erasing all of her sorrows, tears, until at last that revered year of perfection that comes to all when he is ready to answer call will say unto his soul, I am thy goal, revealed and known. Captivity ended, no more mankind blinded by his destructivity ties feels the power from the skies that penetrates the conscious mind and saith unto soul, be no more blind, but find thy goal. Thy cosmic passions are those passions of the Lord, kindling then when needed even a human divine sword of God's will to remove the spill and spatter of the mud that's pinged upon God's design and caused it to be in appearance not at all the radiance that it is, but now we say 'tis his when it is no part of him, but only of the broken limb of incorrectness moved from the way. The caress of God, it must of course point the way, and cannot be that fractioned identity which men have thought to be the right way and have not seen as wrong indeed, because it did not kindle in their heart God's speed, but slowly evoked upon the world that ink blot of human darkness that obscured the light and kept mankind afraid and hiding, scurrying like rats over the heart of the world until the God design seemed blinded and lost. The lost word, now then sought by men, will bring them all once again into that palm of universal hope, the hand of God, that they may one and all evoke and know that life is guided by his beam, and nevermore will be that error men have seemed to think was God, when after all his rod was clearly pointing the way to the shepherd kingdom of illumination and beauty, design most holy and not unruly, not lowly, but raise it into beautiful wings of light flashing through the night and bringing to the soul the full and beauteous goal of hope revealed that men have ever seen, as God sealed within his heart their passions from the start, hoping to cover the naked part of man's own error, steeped in demonology, witchcraft, variance, sundry and divers realms of darkness, draping consciousness, flooding the mind with putrid thoughts and sewers of thought, while God far above revealed what he had wrought and said, "'Tis love, and love alone will seal the soul. And ye who grovel in the dust shall reap the curse of dust until at last, rising free, you shall beam eternity's beeness and be all that God is." O sacred fire, fan the flame and watch what happens to the souls who in thy name receive that purging, to be no more a child of darkness, to be no more a child of iniquity, to be no more a son of ignorance, but now to stand before the living Son of Christic knowledge and be one with that knowledge, with that truth, with that grace, with that proof that is within yourself. You say, "I am not," and I say to all, "I am," for I am Moria, servant of the will of God, devotee of the Spirit of truth from days of elder art. I say to you then, the divine family stands forth in its beauteous wonder, and ye are all a part of it who will make yourselves so. But if you insist in remaining in the darkness and erasing your hopes by that darkness, of failing to magnetize the light, then I say to you, you will walk in the subterranean chambers of the earth, and the sacred fires for you shall not blaze, and the darkness shall not disgorge you, and the contents of your soul will not be raised nor magnetized. But now I say, look above you and behold, for even as I speak, legions of cosmic angels are descending over the force field of this place and upon the planetary body. These are the legions of goodwill, angels of cosmic love, and when they come forth, your souls will suddenly feel that great peace, that sweet release, and that joy that will never cease coming out of the cosmic cup. In each angel hand there is a pink design of infinite beauty, woven upon a blue background of gentle forget-me-nots. For forget not the caresses of heaven upon your soul, how God watched over you in angel eyes through your babyhood, guided your steps over the bridges of life, strengthened you in the night when you were trembling with fear, sought then to hold your hand within his heart and make it clear of all dark consciousness and hatred's delusions. Oh, think ye then of how throughout your life God has molded you, and consider if this is the time to repudiate him. To repudiate him is a chastisement beyond all chastisements. And so, as the summoning of the hosts of light is given by our command, we watch as from the zenith comes forth that starry spiral of hope that are the angels of goodwill, the angels of God's will. Watch them as they come. Perceive them as they descend. Watch them as they blend within your consciousness, a stirring from deep within your soul, as of old. It is the will of God, the sacred flame, dropping the tallow of its abundance upon your life and overflowing the cup of your consciousness with new hope. The world is a world of hope. Your soul is a world in which God spoke of old and will speak again. Open then your hands and your hearts to him and say, O refreshing Father of love, I would be bathed in thy radiance. I would receive thy transcendence. I would be thyself in action in the world. I would extend my hands to do thy will. My heart, my head and my hand, my feet and my whole body, wash thou, as Christ did wash Peter of old. For behold, when he washed his feet, know ye not that he washed him indeed in heart and mind and all of his being? And so, as he had asked, did he receive. And Peter, for whom the cock crew, did also understand the staunchness of the rock. Cephas, the Christic rock, revealed. And how confusing the world is concerning this issue. Long ago, when I stood in the marts of Catholicism as Thomas More, staunch in my defense of truth, I was well aware of this moot truth which so many do not perceive, or the writings of old that say, and thou art Peter, and upon this rock, Christ, will I build my church, did not understand that he spake of the Christic rock as that which should be staunch and stand forth forever, and the gates of hell should not prevail against it. But mankind, in their wresting of the Scriptures to their own destruction, in the blindness of their heart, failed to understand that he was not identifying Peter in his human sense as the rock, but rather the Christic rock. Thou art Christ. Thou art a rock. And upon this rock of Christ will I build my church. Let mankind understand then that they be no longer blinded by this Scripture. Let them see and understand and know that there could be no other rock save Christ, and Christ to each soul. Christ to each soul is the banner we hold forth. Christ, as the basis of culture, is the strength that will staunch the flow of the wounds of the world. Christ, as the staunchest heart, the first begotten, the only begotten, the beloved of the Father, shared and broken as the morsel of the holy cosmic Eucharist, shared by every soul, embellished by none, yet embellishing all, strengthening all in the bonds of reality, extends then his banner o'er the world, and men struggle and grovel in those jealousy senses that clearly say, my God, without understanding the meaning of the word. For to say, my God, is to be my God. To simply say, this is my God, and behold, thou hast thy God, is to divide the world into a camp of sinister destructivity. But when the world awakes from its lethargic sleep of the ages and comes to understand at last that it ought to have some sense knocked into its silly head, then I believe mankind will perceive with God's speed and delight that there is hope set forth as a torch in the night, in fact, by thy God. For all will have the same God, and there will not be divers gods, but only one God. And in that universal monotheism, the sacred monolith of perfection will appear in all as a flame and not a stony flame. Mankind, I say, unfortunately, have actually permitted the element of pure stone to pass thaumaturgically by their darkness into the heart of the flame. And the flame has actually kindled in them and embraced and structured darkness in them because of the density of their own misqualification. Awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. Aphorism, delightful invocation, holy words. These are not the stupidity of blind men. These are the fragrances of God. Hold them in your hand. Hold them in your heart. Hold them in your mind. Realize when you receive them what they are. They are freeing, and they blow forth the breath of God. Parusha. And the love ray descends with the will of God. And the blending of wisdom, and the blending of power, and the blending of the heart of the Son are that consummate reality that summons in every one purity, light, and hope, and perfection, blazing perfection. Is it too strong for you? Do you mock perfection? Do you say to yourself, I cannot possibly be clothed with that? In the name of God, were you created a separate individual? Yes, individually speaking. But all of you were made from the same matrix, the Christ matrix. And in you there is that stern mandate of God perfection that will, if you will call upon it, rebuke the heart of a cold and stony world and say to it, you need to seek a heart of flesh that is pliable and sweet and flexible and complete with all the graces of God. And how beautiful then his seed will go out into the world, and watch that seed as like the stars in the sand. It covers the heart of the world with all the substance of universal perfection. And then this blindness of which we spoke is gone. Man stands straight. He realizes at last that he need not be a spiritual cripple. I am tired. The cosmic hierarchy is tired. And God is tired of mankind's accepting the mantle of a cripple. Sit up within your seats. Sit up straight. Stand straight if you will stand. But whatever you do, command your life and your atoms free. Command your life and your atoms free. And understand that they belong to God perfection. You do not need to allow your life to be choked by the weeds of imperfection and darkness. You do not need to submit to all the thoughts that come into your mind, those carnal thoughts and those vicious thoughts that are not your own, have no part of you. Instead, you ought to summon, and summon boldly, the perfection that you are. Do it daily. Do it hourly if you will. Do it as you will. But in any case, do it. For unless it happens within you, there will be those long and sonorous delays which mankind do not understand. And lo and behold, you will hear men saying, so many years have I struggled to know and to understand. So many years have I sought God, and I have not actually found a great deal of God. I am puzzled. I still seek. What is wrong with me? Or is something wrong with God? But beloved hearts of light, these, of course, are answers that you know if you will accept them. They are the answers of pure and logical reasoning. You know very well that God, that is, that lives, that has created the design of the heart of a world, that has opened up even the power of a sun to energize a solar system. Won't you please be seated? For you see, if half stand and half sit, this is exactly what is going on in the world. And why did you do it? Because you did not understand the oneness of the one mind. Therefore, you should have either all sat or all stood. But I wanted to see just what kind of an experiment would happen. to show you how very silly people are, because they do not wake up to reality even when it is before them. Is this darkness? Am I speaking of darkness, or am I speaking of a kindling light? If I am speaking of a kindling light, lo, I am that light. And if I am that light, and you claim that light too, have I lost something? Nay, I have gained something. And if by the summoning of that something that is reality out of the long caves of darkness into the beauteous emerging realm of fragrant perfection, where the golden sun of illumination shines, and the hope of a new age that is not blind, but is an age that perceives, is seen, then I tell you, the light beams and the beams that flash forth from your heart, as from the heart of God, will create a universal merging. And out of that universal merging, the universal will be seen. And when it is seen, it will catch the gleam from the mind of God that will burnish the heart of the world until it shines also. And behold, a city that is set upon a hill cannot be hid, for man will see the heart of it. And in that scene, that beautiful Kudoy will understand a glimpse of all that God has intended to create and bless mankind with. Oh, hearts of light, how can you stop from allowing yourself to literally tremble with joy as I speak to you? For I am talking to you of that which overcomes the darkness. Many, many times I have come to various individuals, I have come to groups, I have spoken, I have even exorcised those forces that were of the dark, standing beside many an individual upon the stage of life. But men have not seen me, for if they had seen me, they would probably have considered me also a demon. What a travesty then upon the senses it is that mankind can create out of darkness light and out of light darkness. It does not hold reason, for the well of God is deep, and when men go into that deep well with the bucket of their attention, it will overflow as the water of eternal life and gush forth hope and joy to their hearts. I want you to understand then that through the beautiful air, the beautiful cosmic air, there is descending now a matrices of Christ awareness. And as it comes forth out of the mind of God and through the ascended master realm, it will spin a radiance of joy in the air which you can borrow, for I loan it to you freely. Not only today, but tomorrow, and always, as long as the karmic board permits, and no longer. Will you then wonder one day why you failed? Or will you one day wonder why you succeeded? I think it would be a bit easier to wonder why you succeeded, because then, you see, you would have hope of knowing the answer. Whereas in failure, there is only blindness and wonder. This is why the Christ long ago said, "Behold, ye despisers, and wonder and perish. I work a work in your day which you shall see and yet not perceive." Do you understand? It is not necessary for me to quote in all the languages of the world some prestigious sense of divine consciousness that was released to mankind long ago. For today the same word stands. The same word stands because the inner essence and sense of that word is the fragrance of your life. Learn to command life then, and be no longer sick and afflicted and afraid. Do not scurry underneath the nearby boards or rocks. You are not creatures of the rocks or the boards. You are creatures that upon the stage of life may move forward into beauty and perfection born anew. Every day that you kindle those drops of life, you will know that you are the few called forth from the many, and that to you belongs the song of victory. I thank you. I thank you, and I thank you with gratitude in my heart that you have heard my words, for they are meant to be that form of sweet content that is a lullaby to the soul even when it seems to be a harsh chastisement. Like a hair shirt that I wore long ago as Sir Thomas More, it serves to remind those who will listen to the sweetness of God's holy hopes for all. Peace be upon you. Ladies and gentlemen, have you thought that heaven is measuring your reality? Have you considered the possibilities that you are not living just within your own gaze, but within the gaze of those cosmic beings who examine the fabric of man's motivations and intent? In view of the great realities of life, and that these things are true, I commend unto you those beautiful images and the beautiful image, which is the solitary reality of the innate divine intelligence within you. Within you lies a gift, and that gift is so supreme, so beautiful, so all-encompassing, that I want to remind you today of this gift in a more than ordinary manner, that you may esteem it, elevate it, and be elevated by it into that place of cosmic prominence where at last the face of God may be seen by you as the pure in heart that shall see God. The realities of life are fragile, because they are easily broken as a thin thread drawn out in the matrices of life. It is unnecessary then that this fragility of life should cause individuals to be shattered. Let them instead learn to esteem the divine calling and to recognize its reality. For then I believe that all men will feel in a different manner toward the beckoning of heaven that constantly comes unto them, saying, "Come up higher." For individuals have a calling, and that calling, when it is sustained, is a beautiful manifestation of hope, that the things of this world that are not of God may pass away, that those things which mankind ought to cast aside, be cast aside, and that those things that ought to be esteemed as true reality be garnered and gathered in the business of living in that wonderful divine economy of the use of life in a correct manner. How many people today wander the streets of life listlessly and aimlessly? They do not remember the thrust of reality that has been imposed upon them by their cosmic identity. They do not realize their native graces and gifts. They have long forgotten what it means to behold a pillar of light that connects the soul with the divine strength of God, that like a lion with wings
carries forth its activity of roaring unto the hearts of men. It is as a giant seashell pressed to the ear, and the heart of the universe is heard. When all understand that the roar of life and the summoning of the cosmic sun precede mankind's total dedication, they will recognize that first reality must appear to their gaze, and then that reality in all of its solemn beauty will create a new consciousness in them, which shall sunder their ties with the old consciousness, and they shall find that it shall be no more, and there shall be no sense of loss to the soul. For behold, that which now in the latter days appears of divine reality as a manifestation of the Holy Spirit is seen as a tie of cosmic justice moaning at the bar of life, perhaps, when first man set sail, but sooner or later becoming the source of divine contentment and universal peace. When mankind understand that there is no sacrifice in the world, but only the thread of universal contact, when they understand that the human rationalizations in which they have engaged often betray their virtue and their real sense, they will perceive that openness of heart and openness of vision thrusts before men's gaze the realities of God one by one, as though the veils of life were shattered by the transcendent realities of God. Can you understand then, ladies and gentlemen, the burdens upon the heart of the world? Can you understand the burdens upon the Divine Mother's consciousness as she seeks to unify, to glorify, to intensify, to vivify, and to beautify the souls of men? Well, won't you think about it just for a moment? For if you do, I want to assure you that it will bring a tremor of gladness to the heart of the Universal Mother. And with that magnificent tremor of gladness will come a return current of life that will radiate up and down your spinal column, because it is a blessing from on high, signifying the reality of the appearance of Christ and the Christ consciousness in this age, not to one but to many. For the hearts of many today are quaking for fear of those things which are yet coming upon the earth, and how needlessly. Ladies and gentlemen, if truly men and women lift up and exalt their own tender realities, how the green shoots will spring forth, and how the abundant presentation of newness of life and newness of hope will manifest. When it does, it will bring gladness to the soul and delight to the eye of all. But mankind, through sundry visions of mankind's inhumanity to man, through individuals' failures to apprehend that perfection of God, wars have been created in a ceaseless array upon the historical stream. When I speak to you then this day of keeping the flame of God, it is to confer upon you a multitude of graces, in the fond hope that through the multiplication of those graces, you yourselves individually per se will find then room in your heart for those adorning jewels of perfection that are the summoning of more and more of divine grace. The power of God and the power of his manifestation is indeed the boon of every part of life. Yet how frequently individuals do not realize the divine and tender reality that stands shimmering just behind the appearance world. Won't you then today set before your gaze, before the gaze of the soul's eye, that beautiful hope that is the hope of the universal God for the soul to appear in the full regalia of ascended master consciousness? Won't you permit your consciousness to be washed with that pure stream of God reality that is. Won't you admit yourselves that you have from time to time failed to recognize who and what you are, and allowed and permitted yourself to fall in the esteem of the very heavenly beings, simply because you have not recognized that these heavenly beings exist, and have considered that perhaps it is indeed nothing more than a figment in the mind and imagination of some individual? Well, ladies and gentlemen, is your life then your imagination? Is it your life that beats your heart? I say that it is. And if it is your life that beats your heart, and this life is no imagination, then don't you understand that divine imaging of perfection will produce in your world, in your thoughts, in your feelings, in your imagination, that universal stimuli, which is of God, and will produce fruit after its own kind. There is no need for humanity to be uncomfortable. There is no need for individuals to feel themselves surrounded by pressures which they feel they cannot break, which seem as bands of iron or of steel, which seem to enclose the mind and the heart, and not allow that beautiful flexibility of the spirit to exercise itself upon the trampolines of their mind. I want you to understand then that universal grace is within the heart of freedom. And when that freedom is enshrined within your heart and mind, it is a germinating activity of regeneration which will produce in you that magnificent reality that is solely the reality of God. It is not necessary that individuals should then feel bereft of the consciousness of God, for he desires to give that consciousness unto all. But he does not give this consciousness that mankind may feel those competitive manifestations which you have called and termed jealousy. For jealousy is a sad travesty upon the quality of life's pulsations. For life pulsates with the beat of universal freedom, and mankind take upon themselves the solitude of bondage, and yet at the same time lament to one another concerning this bondage imposed upon all and always self-imposed. For somewhere along the trek of life, individuals should understand that they have accepted a certain weakness in their mind and feeling, which has allowed and permitted them to become excruciatingly dark, simply because they do not cleave to the light. When I say this, I do not say it as though it is a reality forever. I say it only as a temporal measure which mankind have themselves instituted, namely, the manifestation of darkness in that place where light ought to dwell. So consider your heart as an abode of light. Consider your mind as a place of light. Consider also your nerves and the various nerve plexus as manifestations of transferal, that individuals may perceive that their nervous energy may be translated into peace and light and strength and wholeness and the fervor of the cosmic fire. When individuals begin to feel this, there is a certain activity of holy vibrancy that occurs within the force field of their mind. And lo and behold, that which mankind of old termed the magical manifestation of reality takes place, and the alchemy of transformation is given to every man, that he may behold at last the great sublime reality which he is, and no longer adhere to those mental concepts that are so self-limiting in manifestation and in consciousness. Will you understand the beauty of divine freedom that can be your own, that is your own, that is the lot of every man, once he realizes that the passion that he feels for freedom is in itself the seed of freedom? And when I say to you today, scatter the seeds of freedom in your consciousness, I say it because it can be done, not because it cannot be done. The question then is, are you willing to accept those graces which heaven offers to you today, and to recognize that you have something to do with the manifestation and exercise of divine dominion in your world, that the entire world be purged of those negative manifestations of darkness, doubt, fear, and confusion that have occupied the mind of the world, and flooded the world with those concepts of the great dragon Tiamat, rather than the holy consciousness of the unity of God and the unity of purpose. The unity of purpose in heaven's name is given to all. And when all understand that the transference of that energy can come into the domain of selfhood just as easily as you push a switch, then certainly you ought to make a switch and understand that you must transfer your consciousness from the sense of limitation and fear to one of love and confidence. Through the exuding of that confidence into the realm of space around about you, you will be hallowing space, so that space will no longer be desecrated by human thoughts and the nonsense of those thoughts. Will you understand that? For it is a severe and sublime moment at the same time, one whereby mankind can understand that they must literally pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, that they must literally seize the opportunity of enshrining freedom upon its throne in order that the world be blessed with those manifestations of God freedom which are the hope of the world. The light of the world, the light of the world, the light of the world is Christ. But unless Christ be enshrined, unless Christ be accepted, unless Christ be understood in heaven's name, you cannot actually bring about that measure of perfection which God himself intends to be the lot of all. Why then will you tarry in those same sense doldrums which you have manifested for so long, without necessarily evoking that cosmic fruit which you have so long longed for? Will you understand then the great need for mankind to enshrine the forever sense of God in their temporal consciousness, their sense of time? The forever sense of God means that you have behind the screen of your mind an abiding sense of that security which can never be taken from you. It means that death cannot manifest for you do not see those episodes and chapters of your existence as though they were the index of death, but rather the manifestation of life. And when you step from the mortal body into the immortal realm, it is a stepping forth into victory and control, because here and herein, in the frame of matter and the appearance world, you have learned to master energy and life. When you learn the supreme sacrifice of the givingness of the soul unto its God flame, the sweet surrender of being will encompass you with quite a bit of suddenness, and behold, the Lord will suddenly return to his temple. How beautiful then that the God that has been denied access and control to the consciousness for so long can at last find himself in that God control of the individual realm, whereby he can institute and preserve those manifestations of the living flame in that mind, in that consciousness, as a breathing essence of wholeness and holiness. Beautiful are the feet of those that preach the gospel of peace. But let me remind you that all the world's a stage, and each man in his time plays many parts. When then you make your exits or entrances, will you understand the grandiose feeling of being in harmony with the living God? Will you understand what it means to cast aside those weights and shreds of mortal darkness and substitute in its place the effulgent circle of cosmic love and light as a flame of protective fire, and the elements of your own tube of light and the elements of the crystal cord descending upon your consciousness with the full impingement and impact of grace? Ladies and gentlemen, you do not need any longer to loll, as it were, upon the beds of life and feel that energy and life is passing you by. Instead, you may learn the mastery of that energy here and now. And as keepers of the flame, find that you can take that magnificent dominion over your life that will give you a newfound freedom that you have not known before. I recall how long ago when first my own mentor, my spiritual teacher, And the internal realm of light within me spoke out of the living flame and said, "Won't you be free?" And I first contemplated the idea, "Won't you be free?" And I said, "Why not?" And I took a forward step in spiritual consciousness. And then there came a moment that was the cessation of all sensation. It was as though I stood upon a pinnacle of non-support in the whole universe and was separated from all life. And from that position, I suddenly reached out with almost a sense of panic, and I cried out, "O God, where art thou?" And out of the flame within my own heart he said, "Lo, I am within thee." And as I thought of this simple idea, this simple but beautiful concept, almost like a child, I suddenly perceived that through the eye of the needle came the thread of light, and my camel passed through. Won't you understand that in my love for those of you who have known me so long, I also wish to extend my hand of friendship and devotion to those who have first heard me speak to them today? It is not a matter of the last being first or the first last. It is not a matter of human competition. It is a matter of human decision that brings in the activity of the divine lever. The human decision is that lever, and it moves as Archimedes' lever of old, the heart of cosmos, to function in your own blessed domain, where God also is. He stands then as complete now as he will ever be, and the fullness of his power is able to evoke those high degrees of confidence within you that will sustain a universal momentum not only through the days of this life, but in the foreverness of God. There are some of you here that will ascend at the close of this embodiment or shortly thereafter. There are some of you that will ascend in your next embodiment. There are some of you that must defer a while. And so I speak to those of you, most especially, who must defer a while, by saying unto you that you can hasten the day of your ultimate freedom in the light by understanding the awesome reality of just being. Being is a solemn responsibility. It is one in which sometimes the deity indeed chastens the soul that it may bear greater fruit. Be not dismayed because all life does not always obey you, but obey life, and it will cast upon the shores of your soul all that your soul needs and requires for each moment. You will find yourselves gathering the shells upon the sands of life and discerning how to produce that real sense of discernment that will separate the chaff from the wheat. And there is much chaff in the world, for men have misqualified substance so grossly, and the hearts of the divine beings are often in a state of lamentation momentarily as they perceive the injustices that move in the busy streets of life. When we speak to you today, then, it is to call you to the keeping of the flame and the sustaining of a momentum of faith in the world that will glorify the beautiful spirit of grace that has made you in such shining hope. And when that shining hope matures, I tell you now that through grace and courtesy and through universal culture and through the voice of kindness and the voice of love, the world shall ascend as one. For we shall all join you when the sublime moment comes that the whole world has ascended its last man and we shall ascend together. We shall descend together to ascend together. And behold, all of you shall understand why the statement was made, the last shall be first, and the first shall be last. Let then your heart not be troubled any longer, neither let your being become afraid. For the waters of life that cover the heart of each individual are given to you that you may drink deeply out of this spiritual draught. For this does not quench the flame. Yea, rather, it is the water of fire that kindles the flame and preserves intact all universal motivation, all elements of universal hope, all that mankind through the centuries have yearned for. And when we behold the heart of the world today, when we see the prayers that are rising as sweet incense from the viharas, the mosques, the temples, from those at all parts of the world, it is as a renewal of our own consciousness of the beautiful Savior of all creation, the beautiful God consciousness, the eternal sense of values that does not demean human life, but esteems it, for it is in manifestation and in principle, the principle of the Most High God. You are matter, as you are spirit, and spirit will be absorbed once again into matter, and matter will be absorbed once again into spirit. And these twain as east and west shall meet, and in the merge of matter and spirit, the new body, the body celestial, shall be revealed as that over which each man may take dominion. In the memory of the hope of God, for the golden age I remain devoted to your ever-enfolding light, divine principle established upon the throne of the heart. Temple bells shall ring out, and every heart and ear who hears will rejoice. Behold, the golden flame of illumination blazes before our gaze. The pulsations of that flame arise and give birth to a renewal of God consciousness within the heart of all who hear and believe. For lo, the sword of the Lord divides the pages of life, that which appears may be real, and that which is darkness may not cleave unto man. For illumination and discrimination are the glorious gift which comes to all who will hear and understand the music of the lute of the heart of illumination, that the ear that hears may be blessed indeed, as an ear that hears and a tutoring one. For those who receive the gift of life and the compassion thereof will be enabled by grace universal to extend that sonorous grace unto all through the release of the living word from the heart of God. Let all understand the beauty that has been, the beauty that is, and the beauty that one day will be, because embodied humanity see the etching of the soul and draw it into the magnetic field of their mind, exalting those concepts released to them by God and adding that dignity of life which is their grace to impart. For it is the joy of God to extend himself unto each monad, that monad be blessed indeed with the capacity to scatter the universal seed and provide ingress and egress to every part of life into the heart of God. The heart of God will answer call. The heart of God will yield to all. The diamond perfection of the law. This brings forth in all that holy awe, that reverence, and deep respect, which to each individual life will resurrect Christ's perfection manifest. Lo, ladies and gentlemen, behold the eternal pathway of truth that has extended itself from within outward through the ages. The glorious luminosity of past ages, then, has filled the unwritten pages of your history with the drama of God's success and God failure. Do you understand that which I term God failure is man's failure? It is only God's, because he is crucified in mankind by man's failure to apprehend the living truth and to make ultimate use of that truth as it is released to him. The seed of cosmic proof is vouchsafed to all, yet all do not utilize it. All do not expend the living energy, the vital faith, the reality that is in the Godhead, and dispense it unto mankind. I am Meru. I release then my blessing to you all, a tangible release of light, and that call which is the call of God within the soul. If I am clothed upon then with only those vestiges of a transient reality, I would have no need to speak to you. But because I am clothed upon not only with the luminosity of God, but with the tenacity of the Holy Spirit, to lay hold upon human hearts, that those hearts may understand reverence and respect for life, and convey that reverence and respect for life not only to the contemporary age, but to all ages of the past and that future that is yet to be. Let men understand then that the glorious release of the culture of heaven to the earth will come about in a spiritual fashion, although it may not always be so recognized. The cultivation of the refined consciousness is a situation of universal bliss, imparting to mankind a renewal of ancient covenants in the present age, when those covenants then, fulfilling the divine will and the human will that identifies with the divine will bring about the culmination of all virtue to modern man today, bringing him into intense identification with infinity itself, thus suffering all to enter in at the strait gate of divine reality and observe how the globes are lit. For when we light the globe of positivity, and we light the globe of what men have called negativity, but from our level is simply a difference in potential for a purpose, the flow of cosmic reality between these globes will indeed produce that manifestation of the chin light, which is the reality of God imparted to man in his Christic endeavors, extending themselves into the world of form as the flame of holy illumination. Now, when that flame is perceived and utilized as an energy force field for the individual monad through embellishing his own individualized heart flame with the universal knowledge, individuals will find that a perennial source of inspiration will flow unto them simply at their call. This release from the heart of God is an activity not only embracing their individual world, but creating an afflatus of light throughout the universe that resembles what your scientists have called the light microphone. It is as though a beautiful light were before an individual, and then the vocalization of mankind's words or even his thoughts were to intensify that flame and bring about that electronic response which would permeate the universe with the voice of each individual. When individuals then learned how to energize the giant force fields of the universe, the cosmic harp of heaven would be heard once again in the land and in the universe as the land of God. For everywhere throughout cosmos, the universal intelligence would create a simultaneity of expression, which means, in fee simple, that all individuals perceiving a fount of knowledge within themselves would have the immediate transference of that knowledge to every other part of life. And what a giant leap that would make in a spiritual fashion. For mankind, through the process of divine attunement, would find the capacity of their individual monadic expression to increase itself and be enlarged upon, so that their capacity to hear spiritually would indeed be a gift of God to them at this present age. What a boon it will be when mankind understand this law and adhere to it. Then they will understand why that which is done in secret will be shouted from the housetops, because it will become impossible for mankind to conceal from the elect, those who have chosen the spiritual way, anything that takes place anywhere in the universe. For immediately it will be known or shouted from the housetops. Let mankind ponder this thought for a moment. I am Meru, and I convey holy illumination's flame to you today. I convey it on wings of song. For behold, that beauteous expression which is called the singing flame is imparted to mankind who are ready to receive it even now. And with the gift of the singing flame to the consciousness of mankind, they will hear in the thrust of cosmic victory and universality the beingness of God conveyed into the realm of their own personal identity. Thus, as man hears, he will perceive thus as mankind perceives, he will do, and thus as mankind carries forth the action of doing, will be fulfilled those ancient tremors of divine wisdom that shall literally shatter mankind's density patterns until that which is formed in crystal and mist is indeed of God. We may say then safely, by thy God, for behold, by thy God shall life rule in thy own world, and thou wilt take dominion over thy native intelligence, which is the intelligence of God inherent within thee, which has been frustrated by the patterns of human density. With the release of all men who can accept it into the reality of God and their freedom from density, you will see taking place that which we will call spiritually intensifying the life flame of each monadic expression. Each individual will find himself raised in consciousness on what may indeed prove to be a permanent level. This will be one of the first steps taken in the whole saga of universal expression, the universal expression of God. Beloved hearts of light, when you hold faith in the invincible cosmic honor flame of God, you will understand that the flame of divine illumination is also waiting to confer its native reality upon all who are waiting to receive it. It is a great pity that individuals fail to understand that this flame is as tangible as that which appeared in the Sinai desert to Moses long ago. It is a part of your own beloved I am presence, and a part of that gnosis of spiritual wisdom whereby you may recover that which of old you lost. For when mankind once again retrieve that which is lost of the expression of the divine intelligence of God within the force field of their own native intelligence, restoring to it that blooming of consciousness which is like the rose blooming in the desert, mankind will find themselves once again able to coincide their consciousness with the consciousness of God blessedness, and thereby convey to mankind the proper use of life and its blessed manifestations. Let me speak for a moment upon that which also is in old Mexico and also in South America. Let me speak of the ancient records. Let me speak of that which is buried neath subterranean jungles, that which is covered with the dust or muck of centuries, and now is in many cases covered with vines and trees and undergrowth. I assure you, as the Lord liveth, in South America there was a remnant of a giant expression of an Atlantean civilization, magnificent in all of its outpicturing, magnificent in its great cities and buildings, gilded with gold, its temples and vast domes, its wisdom, and even the manifestation of those sepulchres which were used in those days for the incarceration of the bodies of those who passed from the screen of life. If you were to see the care with which the expressions to God as Incal were expressed in the ancient and hidden Inca civilizations, your hearts would leap with the pulsations of illumination's flame. As the pages of the hidden history of the world were actually unraveled and the book of life was opened, you would see the marvels that were created in those days long ago in South America, and you would desire once again to see the impoverished people of South America once again understanding the love of God and the light of his Son of illumination. And what shall I say of the Easter Island images? And what shall I say of the erection of these vast monuments by what can well be called a thaumaturgical process? What shall I say of the ancient powers of man, which then were existent and active in man, and today lie dormant? I tell you, much of the hidden hungers of mankind and their search for illumination is the recovery of those giant talents which mankind once had, but in many cases misused, through the misuse and abuse of the great powers that were given to them, and their failure to apprehend the universal deity and his extension of love and life through them in the embellishment of the ancient civilization which was manifest. They failed to comprehend the universal principles which sought to find life expression through them, and because of this, the powers of light and the karmic board withdrew, as it has done so often before, from the pages of life and civilizations, that sustaining element of universal grace, whereby life was able to achieve a greater measure of perfection. Then, too, what shall I say of the feast of Belshazzar and his 1,000 lords? What shall I say of this ancient feast, when the handwriting appeared upon the wall, and the words were written, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin, and behold, thou art weighed, O civilization, in the balance, and thou art found wanting. What then shall the races of mankind do, when they are weighed, as they shortly shall be, before the lords of Karma? For there has come to pass in this day and age a petition of the keeper of the scrolls for what has been called an exploration and research of mankind's integrity and God perfection. And the report must now come forth from the planetary body and be brought before the cosmic lords, before the karmic lords, and before the entire spirit of the great white brotherhood in its eternal temple in the heart of the great central sun. This will happen within 6 months, that mankind will find that the examination of the earth by the karmic lords will result in a most certain edict that shall go forth unto all lands. This edict may be made manifest in a public manner, or it may be concealed and revealed only to those who are able to have eyes to see and ears to hear. But when it cometh forth, I assure you that it may well produce strange activities in the entire families of nations. There may be indeed a kindling of wars and rumor of wars, of earthquakes in divers places, and a shaking of the consciousness of mankind as a vindication of the wrath, or that which has been called and is the wrath of God, as the chastisement of the great central sun against mankind, so that mankind may produce more fruit than this earth has produced in all of its recent years. For deterioration has occurred within the mind and consciousness of mankind, and human viciousness has failed to cognize the great fruit of cosmic illumination which ought to be gleaned by mankind today as always. I am Meru. I do not come before you as a God or Lord, but rather as one who is your fellow servant of the prophets and those who stand upright before the God of the whole earth. Behold, I say unto you that we are one, that in our consciousness there is one determination, and that determination now is that mankind seek illumination as never before, that they may clean escape from those karmic patterns which surely, as the Lord liveth, shall descend into manifestation. What the karmic lords will determine is not mine to reveal, for the council has not yet convened, and we must, in due course of respect, reserve to them the right to perform their deliberations of spiritual examination of the life streams presently occupying the planetary body, and thereby make out of that determination whatever shall be the answer to mankind's present and current dilemma. Behold, I tell you, the flame of cosmic illumination liveth and blazeth, and as it liveth and blazeth, behold, it brings forth new thoughts unto mankind, and new facets of awareness that shall reveal to all peoples a gradual integration of their consciousness into the consciousness of the one God. For mankind shall indeed hunger and thirst after righteousness as never before. And you shall see an event taking place in all the family of nations that results from a great quaking of men's hearts as fear is multiplied first, as fear in its multiplication causes them to turn to love. For fear is a certain aspect which mankind have often not recognized for what it is. It is a chastising element in many cases of the love of God, who through the power of what men have called fear shall then be seen as an aspect of divine love that would bring mankind to their senses before they lose their eternal birthright and their eternal gifts of cosmic grace. Let all understand this then, for we want everyone upon the planetary body to be blessed with the holy flame of illumination. It is up to the karmic councils then to release these gifts unto mankind. But mankind ought to have in their spirit a great yearning and a desire for these gifts, that they may understand not only the ancient civilizations of the past, but those civilizations which shall come forth in the future, because the laws of God are loved and adhered to. Men of devotion will see that true gold is the gold of the Spirit. And so if tonight I invoke the angels of illumination to manifest and coat your consciousness with pure gold, let me say that that patine which I bring to you as an overlay of cosmic righteousness and illumination is only intended to whet your appetite for the solid gold of the Spirit, which can be produced in your awareness and force field as you drink at greater levels into that consciousness through your own breathing awareness of the need to desire the flame of holy illumination. For unless you desire that flame and seek it as men seek the sun, as men seek the light, as men seek God, you will not find it. For behold, the Lord shall hide his face from those who do not understand his perfection, who are unwilling to receive it, upon those whose hearts are consciously darkened, and upon those who turn away from his election of perfection. Behold, the time has come when men must choose this day whom they will serve, whether the Lord in his extension of holy illumination and grace, or the prince of this world in his darkness and his state of non-becoming. For I tell you truly, mankind in their consciousness have desecrated the flame of God illumination in the force field of their own mind by a lack of their faith and integrity in the wholeness of God and his ability to reach out still unto mankind in physical embodiment and speak to them. Think you then that in this age the hand of God or the tongue of God is tied, that it cannot speak to mankind, that the Lord is dumb? I tell you not so, for the Lord speaks not only physically in this manner, but also in that magnificent outreach of his power to the hearts of men that summons those hearts before him unto that judgment of the moment, which says unto all with the firmness of the Godhead, the Lord thy God liveth, and because he liveth, you shall live, you shall be a remnant of perfection unto the family of nations, that that perfection may sing a new song. This is the meaning of that which was revealed by John upon Patmos, saying that mankind should dip their vestures in the blood of the Lamb, that they might thereby be cleansed. We are not referring to a sacrificial dipping of the vesture of mankind, but rather a purification of his garments in the whole stream of the symbolic Lamb of God that taketh away the sins of the world. The Lamb is a symbol of the pure God consciousness expressed in the holy radiance of the Christ. Through the priesthood of Melchizedek, men shall be summoned to that awareness that brings forth the freedom of man to express independently of his earthly father and mother, recognizing all who are brethren in the light as father, mother, sister, brother, and chosen of God. For when men choose God consciously and regenerately, they fulfill that perfection which has been ordained from the foundation of the world. And today it summons to that beautiful and bountiful judgment the hearts of men, that they may receive our blessing. O angels of my band, Coat now the consciousness of these embodied souls and those who shall hear our words in the future with that pure patine of golden illumination spun from the heart of the singing flame of illumination. Let them understand the meaning of effulgent grace, of the overflowing of the consciousness, of the summoning of the elect to the borders of the kingdom, that the kingdom may expand and that life upon the planetary body become a life of worth to all, that progress and the bounty of the Christ consciousness be given unto men as never before, and that they recognize that this exchange of their human consciousness and the measure thereof is in itself the number 666, which is transmuted by the power of the 3 times 3 into the 999, or the power of the 3 times 3, and mankind is freed forever from the carnal mind and its immediacy of death into the perfection and life of the spiritual mind and the peace that thereby is conveyed to all who will accept it. I am Meru. Behold, the goddess Meru stands with me, and shall also utter on the morrow those facets of her consciousness which pertain to the divine feminine, the bringing forth then of greater radiance in the face of all life and its human discord, so that in mankind's seeing of that perfection and its concordant reality, they shall yearn to see a greater measure of the architecture, the culture, the wisdom, and the beauty of the new age to be unfolded within their heart, and thus within the heart of a planet. Peace and wisdom upon you, and the victory of the singing flame forever be manifest to the earth. I thank you.